Welcome to Morning Jen. What a morning this is. It is Monday, August 12th, and we have some big breaking news for you. This is news that came out on Saturday, and Donald Trump does not want us to see these videos. He just doesn't. And this came out from ProPublica. This is a fabulous website where we guys, I need to hear in the chat. Can you hear me? Yes, you can. Fabulous. Okay, so this is fantastic news because Donald Trump does not want us to hear it, and we absolutely need to hear this. So let me tell you more about it. And I think part of the problem this morning is I don't have my earphones on, and so maybe that is why. Can you hear me now? Yeah, I think so. That is why maybe I did not have the sound going. So this is fantastic flippin' news. Donald Trump does not want us to hear about the news that came out from ProPublica this weekend. And so we need to spread it for you. These are secret videos. And no, these are not the P-tapes. This is worse. Okay, guys, we know how depraved this man is. I don't really care what he is doing with his bodily functions. What I care about is what he has planned for our country if he should take office. So let me set this up for you. And let me make this absolutely clear. Let me make this absolutely clear for you that I am here on Morning Jen, and I am absolutely part of the Mary Trump Media Network. We've just moved this show onto this channel so that you get served up the information when you want in the alerts when you want. We have so much programming that we are branching out, still part of this umbrella. Okay, let's get to this top story. So ProPublica, which is a nonprofit news organization, broke a story on Saturday, August 10th. And this story broke oddly at the same time that Politico, which is a very much for-profit organization that was bought by a giant German conglomerate for $1 billion a couple of years ago, and was run and started by a very conservative owner. Politico has this competing story, and I don't want you to get distracted. So here's the bottom line. ProPublica has broken a story about training videos created by Project 2025. And this is huge. This is what the Donald Trump administration has in store for us if he gets in office, or any future Republican president. This is what our eyes should be on. It is essential for us to watch. While instead, the corporate, conservative, conglomerate, Politico, is trying to tease us with some stupid story about some hackers who apparently, allegedly, broke into the Trump campaign. But big effing deal. The campaign, so what? All they're claiming right now, even if it's true, is that they have a copy of the dossier based on public information about JD Vance. We know enough about the guy. Don't get distracted. The top story is what I'm about to tell you now. And to give full credit where credit is due, I want to make sure that you see the name of the authors of this story by ProPublica. But first, I want to also, let me tell you why I don't care about the corporate media story about the supposed hack. Okay, and let me just show you first that. Okay, here is the headline from Politico. Again, all happening on Saturday, August 10th. So this headline seems sensational. Don't be fooled. We received internal Trump documents from Robert. Then the campaign confirmed it was a hack. Again, this is a non-story. All the emails and information going on inside the Trump campaign are no different than what we see publicly. And in fact, my view of it was I really can't feel all that bad or all that shocked that the weirdo Donald Trump, the same guy who was keeping the most sensitive national security documents wide open in a guest bathroom in his resort, would end up getting hacked, right? Not a shocker. I don't feel bad, and I really, really don't care about what is in those hacked documents, and neither should you. If it's newsworthy, it will come out. But keep in mind, Politico sat on this story. They knew about this. They received information over the summer, and they have not released it. And do you know what happened? Lo and behold, on Saturday, suddenly Donald Trump's campaign confirms, yeah, that's from our campaign, and we were hacked. We were hacked by Iran. Now, first of all, I'm not sure if I believe it. Second of all, I don't care. And third of all, isn't the timing really interesting? The Trump campaign, I believe, and you're hearing it here first. I believe that the campaign decided to let Politico know that they were supposedly hacked the same day as ProPublica came out with its blockbuster story. And this is what we need to talk about. Okay, let's turn to that. Here's how I found out. My good friend Jesse Eisinger, who is a Pulitzer Prize winning reporter at ProPublica, puts out this tweet saying, when the story comes out on Saturday. And here's what he said. No, we got the private training videos from Project 2025, which Trump seeks to disavow. It's stuck to him. And here is what he said. The videos say, I'm going to share some of these with you, but here's this sort of overview. These videos contain advice. These are training videos. The training videos are for people that right now are lining up to be part of the Trump administration should he win. Because last time they had to scramble to put together a team, and they didn't know if these guys were true believers who would kiss Donald Trump's ring and subordinate democracy for the whims and revenge fantasies of this weird, deranged man. Okay, and so here's what the videos are going to show you, and I will share those. One of the videos says the plan is, if you join the administration, to eradicate any reference to climate change anywhere in documents, websites, and policy. The second thing is, if you're going to sign up, get ready to be persecuted and hold your ground, because there's going to be radical, undemocratic reforms. And finally, one of the bits of advice we're gonna see is don't leave a paper trail. This is ironic because this particular video that I'll show you, the guy's like, don't leave any records of what you're doing. And yet this is a video. Pretty funny. Okay, now, again, before I jump into those videos for you, I want to make sure that you know and that you should read this article in ProPublica by Andy Kroll and Nick Sergey. And they worked with an organization to do this called Documented. And I want to show you. I think I have that headline. But if I don't have the headline, I think you saw the picture. Let me just show you again in Jesse's tweet. This is the story. You can find it by either looking on Twitter or online if you go to ProPublica's website. And I'll show you. I have it, right here in front of me for your reference. Okay, so please look at that. But before I jump into those videos, you guys need to know that this is about Donald Trump. Even though they don't mention his name in this video and they say, we're preparing for any conservative administration. Folks, the only Republican running for president right now is Donald Trump. This is for him, and these videos were recently made. Okay, and so let me just show you something. They are trying to distance themselves from this so much that JD Vance, and I think you probably saw this, JD Vance, who is the vice presidential running mate of Donald Trump, wrote an introduction to a book written by this guy, Kevin Roberts. He is the head of the Heritage Foundation. That's who quarterbacked and drafted and organized Project 2025. And to be clear, when I say drafted, it's more like edited, because each section of this really backward agenda for the Trump administration was written by a different person, the vast majority of whom either worked in the Trump administration, worked on the 2016 or 2020 Trump campaign, or are working right now on Donald's 2024 campaign. This is absolutely linked to the campaign. So okay, JD Vance wrote that introduction, and I need to tell you, That book is being postponed. The publication is supposed to happen now, and it is being put off till after the election because JD Vance and obviously the Trump campaign does not want this, and neither does Kevin Roberts want this to come forward because it shows how much JD Vance supports this very, very dangerous agenda. And in fact, he refers to progressives as non-humans. They don't want this coming out, right? Okay, so let's move forward now. As I told you, what this ProPublica story does is it shares with us videos. These videos are now exposed. Donald Trump does not want us to see them. And that is why I believe they finally admitted that the leak happened. They're trying to distract us. Don't be distracted. Focus on this. Okay, let's take a look now at these videos. Here's the first one. This one is the funny one that tells listeners, and the listeners for these videos are people who want to be part of the Trump administration. So let's look at this first one and we will talk on the other side.
You know, the adage we hear a lot now is like, wow, this meeting could have been an email. Well, in the federal government, this email probably should have been a meeting, because what you probably want to do is if you need to resolve something, it's probably, if you can do it, it's probably better to walk down the hall, buttonhole a guy and say, hey, what are we going to do here? Talk through the decision, work it out. If you reduce it to writing, maybe you can protect it under some of these exemptions, but man, that's a lot of a fight. You're probably better off going down to the canteen, getting a cup of coffee, talking it through and making the decision, as opposed to sending him an email and creating a thread that accountable.us or one of those other groups is going to come back and seek, and you're going to have to explain why you're withholding it, and you're going to fight in court. It's going to be a lot of expense. It's an email that's better resolved with a meeting.
Now, in some ways, telling people don't create a record is not that abnormal if you're a lawyer. Lawyers often tell people don't have conversations about litigation, even though it would be possibly covered by the attorney-client privilege. But here what this guy is saying is you should work actively to subvert attempts for the public to find out what you are doing through Freedom of Information Act requests. And what this training video is telling people who would join the Trump would join the Trump administration, is you need to hide what you're doing. You know, we're not talking about smoke-filled rooms. He said the canteen. Canteen, he means like the dining hall somewhere or a coffee shop. And what this means is we are going to need more undercover journalists to be following these people around and listening to these conversations they're going to try to have off the record, outside of the scope of, a lack of transparency, no public scrutiny. And this is just going to make investigative journalists work harder, but we can do it. Now, the next video I want to show you is the one in which a member of Project 2025 tells people watching the videos, again, these are secret training videos that have been exposed. And he basically says, you're going to be criticized. And you need to be someone who can resist the feeling of, resist being shunned by your neighbors, resist having your more liberal children hate you. You need to be a true believer. And you need to be willing to do whatever needs to be done to radically overhaul American overhaul what we've put in place. We say in the Kamala Harris campaign, we're not going back. They want us to go back, and they want you to be a true believer or don't bother to show up. Take a look at this.
If the next Republican president does not execute a dramatic course correction, there may never be another chance. So if you're not on board with helping implement a dramatic course correction because you're afraid it'll damage your future employment prospects, it'll harm you socially. Look, I get it. That's a real danger. It's a real thing. But please, do us all a favor and sit this one out.
Okay, the guy who said that is named Jones. I'm looking at the article right now, and I'm not saying, Tom Jones, and he's a former Senate investigator who now runs American Accountability Foundation. I'm sorry, the first guy was Jones. That was the guy who told you to go to the canteen. in terms of sitting this out, I will find out the name of that gentleman in a moment. But the bottom line is here. I want you to take another look at that. What he's saying here, radical overhaul. I really, really want you to hear once again what he is getting at.
If the next Republican president does not execute a dramatic course correction, there may never be another chance. So if you're not on board with helping implement a dramatic course correction because you're afraid it'll damage your future employment prospects, it'll harm you socially, look, I get it. That's a real danger. It's a real thing. But please, do us all a favor and sit this one out.
Okay, I want to be absolutely clear. This is a Trumper, right? This is a guy who is at the center of telling people to self-select for a future Trump administration. That guy telling you, sit this one out if you can't get involved in setting us back, a radical course correction. We'll talk about what that means in a moment. He is a former legal advisor in the White House presidential personnel office under Trump. Okay. Dan Huff is telling people there's going to be blowback. So either it's our way or the highway. You better be ready. We don't want you if you're going to crumble. We only want true believers. And so what is Dan Huff talking about? Again, a Trumper. Project 2025 is Trump's Project 2025. They are this is a personnel guy, the legal guy in the Office of Personnel for Donald Trump before. He will be working in the next Trump administration if Donald Trump gets elected. He is in this video because if you want to get into the Trump campaign, I bet you're going to see him face to face in an interview. And he's going to say the same thing face to face. Are you ready for the blowback? Can you handle pushback? And so what is this radical overhaul? What do you think? It's all spelled out in Project 2025. That's why these videos come with a project. And these are not separate things. If you're thinking, Jen, that's nice, but what do these videos have to do with Project 2025? They are referenced on the Project 2025 website. This is about training for Project 2025. And the radical overhaul is to roll back women's rights. They've already rolled back a right to abortion. They don't believe in gay rights and lesbian LGBTQ rights. They don't want us to have economic freedom. They want to crush labor unions. They want to end Head Start. You know about what they are trying to do. They want to destroy Social Security. They don't want any overtime for civil servants. They want to change the laws so the so-called non-political people, and there are hundreds of thousands of people in the government, if not more, who are non-political. They're civil servants who are experts in their fields, in the agencies and so on. Scientists at the EPA, and I could go on and on. They want to change their status in such a way that they could be fired. And there's another thing that they want to do, which is ramp up agencies that are pretty small. One is called OIRA, and that organization is one that has to review regulations to make sure they pass a particular cost-benefit analysis. Not all regulations, but a lot of them about our health and safety. And they want to ramp that up for the purpose of killing regulations, rolling back our protections as consumers. Okay, that's what's going on. And I now want to share the third video with you. This is somebody who was also part of the Trump administration who is giving us an example of what she would like to see happen. And it is exceedingly dangerous. Let's look and we will talk on the other side.
Climate change allegedly is everywhere. And if the American people elect a conservative president, his administration will have to eradicate climate change references from absolutely everywhere. And according to our intelligence community, the number one threat facing our country today is, drumroll, climate change. Not Russia, not China, not AI, climate change. This shows how the federal government is all in on this issue. And climate change activists wield a lot of power. This is an issue to pay attention to as it has infiltrated every part of the federal government. Now, when I think of climate change, I immediately think of population control, don't you? I think about the people who don't want you to have children because of the impact on the environment. Perhaps not everyone will make that connection, but after spending time in the international space trying to protect life, I can tell you that this is part of their ultimate goal, to control people.
Okay. That's Bethany Cosmo. And no, Bethany, when I think about climate change, I don't think about trying to control people and stop them from having children, Bethany. No, Bethany, I think about my children and my grandchildren being able to survive on this planet. I think about life. I think about millions of people in locations that are getting so hot that they're unbearable and dangerous and they can't live there. I think about places that are going to be flooded out and whole islands and communities that are going to be destroyed, Bethany. So, no, I don't think about abortion, Bethany. Now, who is that person? Yet another Trumper. This is Bethany Cosmo, a conservative activist, and she was a former deputy chief of staff at the U.S. Agency for International Development in the Trump administration. Okay? It goes on and on. The vast majority of people who appear in these videos, not surprisingly, have a connection either to a past Trump campaign, the current campaign, or the Trump administration. Now, I don't have all the videos for you, but I want to also let you know that someone named Kate Sullivan, and I'm reading from this article for you. Kate Sullivan, who was another speaker, spoke about the goal to essentially get rid of equal rights and opportunities based on gender. Guys, this is the story. I encourage you to go over to the ProPublica website. You can watch some of these videos yourself. And also, I think bit by bit, we're going to see more of these on the evening news. Now, I hope more stations and more cable channels pick this up, but it's not entirely clear to me that they will. So thank you for that breaking news and sharing that. I'm glad I shared that with you. Again, it's a ProPublica story. These are the secret training videos exposed. And if there are more that they share, I will tell you more in the coming days. Okay, so my second story is looking into the Harris campaign. After that, I'll look into the Trump campaign for you and tell you how things are going. First, let's look at the crowds. And I think that what I want to share with you first is this incredible crowd in Las Vegas, Nevada, because I really have seen nothing like it. They had to shut the doors at one point to this particular venue because it was getting hot. And despite the fact that you might think there's air conditioning everywhere in Nevada, in a place like this with bodies heating the space up and it reaching 100 plus degrees outside, they made the call to close the doors. I can't even see an empty seat. All I can see is exuberance, joy. It looks like a Beyonce or Taylor Swift concert. Let's watch. I feel the joy. I feel the energy. At some point, I'm going to share with you later in the show the person who does not feel that joy and does not feel that energy. In fact, who feels that all of his energy and life and blood is being drained out of him when he hears that cheering crowd. So that's the vibes. Let's look at the numbers. We have a new poll coming out from the New York Times, and you can see that Kamala Harris is here, and this is very tiny, so I'm going to go closer. Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin. We have Kamala Harris leading in all of those states. This is three key states, and this is Times Siena poll. That is the source. You can find it yourself. Now, I don't always put too much credence in polls. What matters is votes. And we should act like we are behind because we are, Kamala Harris, Tim Walz, we're the underdogs. But I just want to give you the vibes and the polls first. We also have some incredible endorsements for the Harris Walls campaign. First, we have George Floyd's brother. He has endorsed Harris Walls, and he knows from which he speaks. As you know, Tim Walz was a governor when his brother was murdered in plain sight by Derek Chauvin. And he said that Minnesota governor is built for this. He is very much in support of this man, and he has had experience with his compassion and his leadership. That is a very significant endorsement. I'm also excited to say that Jesse Ventura has endorsed Harris Walls. And if you don't know, I'm going to show you a clip of that, but if you don't know who Jesse Ventura is, because I don't know, maybe you're too young to know. I know most of my viewers are in the Gen X and a little older realm, but let's look at this. This is a picture of Jesse Ventura. He has a real name. You know, believe it or not, Jesse Ventura was his stage name. So he was born James George Janos. He went by the stage name Jesse Ventura when he was a WWE wrestler. Prior to that, though, he was a Navy SEAL and later became the governor of Minnesota. He was not a Republican. He was not a Democrat. He ran on the reform ticket and unseated a Republican governor. Now, I am going to show you his endorsement because I think it means a lot. And I want to point out that Jesse Ventura was a wrestler in the same era as Hulk Hogan. So we have two in the golden age of wrestling, you know, people who were competitors and rivals. One is supporting Donald Trump, the 34-time the candidate who was convicted by a jury on 34 felony counts, versus Kamala Harris, the prosecutor. Let's take a look at who Ventura is endorsing, with Hulk Hogan, as we know, endorsing the weirdo.
I'm going to be selfish. A few years ago, I got the opportunity to see the United States elect its first black president. I didn't think that could ever happen, and they even re-elected him. Well, now I'm going to be selfish again. I've only got a few elections to go. I'm 73 years old now, so the window's closing. I want to be alive to see the first woman president of the United States of America and the first woman commander-in-chief, and we've got her right now.
Governor,
I love hearing that. I can't get enough of men, and particularly white men, supporting Kamala Harris. And he has a huge following, and I'm glad that he is speaking out. Now, one last thing on the Harris campaign before I pivot over to what's going on in Donald Trump's world. One thing that JD Vance and Donald Trump and the MAGA supporters have been accusing Kamala Harris of is not answering press questions. And she is, you know, she hasn't held an official press conference, but as you can see, she, in the last 3 weeks, managed to solidify all the votes of the delegates. She managed to pump up the volunteers and mobilize the country. And she is out on the campaign trail. She did this whirlwind tour with her VP running mate, Tim Walz, over the past, 5 days. And in between, going here to there, she does speak to the press. And she is going to hold a major press conference soon about her economic policies. But here's what she did on the sidelines, on the fly, no teleprompter, talking to the press. Let's listen.
Next week, and it'll be focused on the economy and what we need to do to bring down costs and also strengthen the economy overall.
Can you
Do
give
you
us a
have
sense
any
of
reaction to the
Go ahead,
Israeli strike in Gaza today that killed at least 80 people? That's the death toll.
Yet again, there are far too many civilians who've been killed. I mean, Israel has a right to go after the terrorists that are Hamas. But as I have said many, many times, they also have, I believe, an important responsibility to avoid civilian casualties.
Madam Vice President, you've been saying that since October 7th, and that has been the administration's policy for many, many months now, as tens of thousands of civilians have been killed. I mean, there are people who are asking for limitations on arms to Israel, any kind of change. What do you say to those folks who are looking for more than we should look out for civilians?
Well, look, first and foremost, and the president and I have been working on this around the clock, we need to get the hostages out. We need a hostage deal, and we need a ceasefire. And I can't stress that strongly enough. It needs to get done. The deal needs to get done, and it needs to get done now.
On economy, I know you're going to speak about that this coming week.
Yeah.
Can you give us a sense on what your view is on the Fed and independence of the Fed? President Trump weighed in on that list last week and said he thought he should have some say in the Fed's decisions.
I couldn't disagree more strongly. The Fed is an independent entity, and as president, I would never interfere in the decisions that the Fed makes.
And what's your take on their policies right now? There was some concern last week as the market fell that there might be a recession coming. What's your view on that?
Well, as we know, there was some turbulence this week, but it seems to have settled itself, and we'll see what the decisions they make next. And I hear about them about the same time you do.
Sure.
Yeah.
Do you know what day you will roll out?
Have you started your convention
reaction
speech?
to the Trump
By
campaign
midweek.
saying it's
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
So we learned a couple things there. We learned her position on various important matters, what's going on in Gaza. And we also learned that she believes the Fed should be independent, unlike Donald Trump, and that she has about to roll out her platform. The woman's only been in this for 3 weeks. You can kind of understand why she's doing this methodically, step by step, and we will soon see that. Guys, let's pivot to what is going on now in Donald Trump's campaign. Well, as you know, he was not happy about the poll numbers, and he doesn't believe the polls. So good, that's fine. But he's had some other issues. He's having major crowd envy, and he is not happy with his coverage in the New York Times. He was at his single rally that he has done in the past week or so. He is supporting his competitor. The reason why Donald Trump, among other reasons, does not like, and in fact has this vendetta against Jon Tester, is that Tester blocked Donald Trump's nominee, his really weird doctor, who was known as a pill pusher. He blocked Ronnie Jackson, known as the Candyman, who denies he was known as the Candyman, who has been, and we know on the record, been in trouble for being drunk on the job. Jon Tester blocked him from a particular important position, and as a result of that, Donald Trump has been angry at him. So he, of course, senator of Montana, and Montana is a state that is, locked up for Donald Trump. Okay, it's easy to confuse because Nevada is really where the action was happening. So the reason why Donald Trump is so angry at Maggie Haberman is this. There was a report from the New York Times that Donald Trump called Kamala Harris the B word. Yes, a bitch. And this comes from a New York Times story that is worth reading. I'm going to hold it up for you right here. And it says, inside the worst 3 weeks of Donald Trump's 2024 campaign. This is an article. It's lengthy. I read it over the weekend. It came out also on August 10th. Saturday is the day that I know you might be relaxing and not wanting to read the news, but that's why I'm here on Monday, to tell you what you might have missed. And this is a detailed story with multiple sources of Donald Trump calling Kamala Harris a bitch repeatedly. And it is an account of a dinner he had August 2nd in Bridgehampton, New York, at the home of someone named Howard Lutnick. And this is an executive from Cantor Fitzgerald. You might remember this was a place that during 9/11, he was somewhat of a hero. A lot of his staff died in 9/11, and he did what he could to support the families after that happened. Unfortunately, though, he is actually a Republican, and he was holding this big fundraiser for Donald Trump because he is one of these people who apparently, when it comes to his money, cares more about taxes and having more than his fair share than he does about democracy. But I'm going to read a part of this story to you, and this is why he is so angry at Donald Trump. I'm sorry, why Donald Trump is so angry at the New York Times. It says, some guests hoped Mr. Trump would signal that he was recalibrating after a series of damaging mistakes, but he did not. He kept talking about how the election was stolen from him in 2020. And why did these people think he would say anything different? They also asked him to face up to the fact that the whole political landscape has changed now that Kamala Harris and Tim Walz are in the race. And he said at some point whether he had regrets that he made the racist comments, untrue racist comments that Kamala Harris, he claims, suddenly became black and never discussed her black heritage, her mixed heritage. She's Indian and black. Her father is Jamaican and black, and her mother is from India. And he said he has no regrets. And he says, I think I was right. And that was something that rattled donors, according to this New York Times story. In addition, when they said, what are you going to do to provide a positive vision for the future? That's what people want. They don't want angry dystopia weirdness. And he said, I am who I am. Now, for me, if you are a Broadway musical aficionado, when you hear the words, I am who I am, maybe you think of La Cage aux Folles in the song I Am What I Am and put a little more mascara on. I love that musical, but that is not what Donald Trump was getting at. But since we talked about mascara, over the weekend, someone who loves eyeliner, JD Vance, and nothing wrong with that. I think his eyes pop and they look great with his eyeliner. I wear eyeliner. I'm not sexist. If he wants to wear it, go for it. Over the weekend, a picture emerged that has been, I believe, authenticated by a classmate from Yale Law School of JD Vance in drag. It appears that he is at a party. Looks like he's in a kitchen near some red Solo cups. And it's probably like a Halloween or dress-up party. But, here's the deal. On Halloween, you can wear any costume you want. I have been to those pop-up costume shops. I know you've been to them. I mean, you can dress as like the hot dog guy saying, who do they find the guy who did this? You can dress up as Bob the Builder. You can, listen, guys, there are a plethora of costume opportunities. And there's a certain kind of guy who's a little bit sexist and a little bit insecure who uses that opportunity sometimes to make fun of women and dress up in drag. And there's also people who may be dressing up in drag because they want that opportunity, because they actually are really fantastic at drag. I have friends who did that. And there are the people maybe who are just trans curious. So I don't know what's going on with JD Vance, and it's fine on that point. But what I want to say about JD Vance, though, is he's a phony and he's a chameleon. And he got called out on CNN by Caitlin Collins, of all people. Let's listen.
But you can't police people for being anti-Israel or pro-Israel. You can police people for violating the law. And we have seen some of that with some of these protests.
Okay, so you agree that people who break in and vandalize a building should be prosecuted?
Exactly.
Okay, I'm just checking because you did help raise money for people who did so on January 6th, which was, impeding an official proceeding, breaking into a building that they weren't allowed to be in, and vandalizing the Capitol.
Well, Caitlin, I know that this is the obsession of the national media to talk about what happened 2 years ago, 3 years ago on January the 6th.
It's not an obsession. I'm just seeing if it's a double standard.
Let me answer the question, Caitlin. Look, here's been my basic argument about January the 6th. If you beat up a cop, of course you deserve to go to prison. If you violated the law, you should suffer the consequences. But there are people who protested on January the 6th who have had the complete weight of the Justice Department thrown at them when, at worst, they're accused of misdemeanors. Now, again, there are people who are accused of worse offenses, and that's a problem. But you can't have Black Lives Matter protesters who rioted and vandalized go free when you have people who were actually peacefully protesting on January the 6th who have the book thrown at them. That's the double standard that I'm most worried about.
Yeah, I don't think there's an obsession with January 6th, but it is a legitimate question. And given what you just said there, and as Trump is getting closer to, as he's a presumptive Republican nominee, he has said he would pardon, it's considered a blanket pardon for everyone on January 6th. Are you saying that shouldn't happen? People who beat up cops should be excluded from that?
Well, I think what President Trump has said, and of course he can speak for himself, but I pay pretty close attention to what he says. And I think what the president has said is that people who have this double standard applied to them should be pardoned. And
that is utter bullshit. JD Vance contradicted himself in that same interview. First, he said people who had mere misdemeanors were thrown in jail. Okay, that's not true. There were major violent protesters who beat up police officers. And he tries to distinguish between that. And then as soon as Caitlin Collins calls him out and says, yeah, Donald Trump is going to do a blanket pardon, then all of a sudden he claims that that's fine, right? Okay, so that's kind of like saying if you got caught speeding and there's someone that when the police officer pulls you over doesn't get a ticket, that you're not going to get a ticket. That's not how it works. Law enforcement cannot get every single person, can't arrest every single person. And the idea that a president would give blanket pardons if he's going to give blanket pardons to people who are selectively prosecuted, or if there's any kind of double standards, then the prisons should be empty of everybody. So JD Vance is just a suck up, and he's doing whatever he can to win. That's what we are dealing with. Now, one last thing before I go to Crazy Town. The number one thing that they're trying to do over in the Trump campaign is find something that will stick, right? They're trying to attack Tim Walz as, given his 24 years of military service in the Army National Guard. And that's not working. When you have President Bone Spurs, who said on the Howard Stern show that fighting STDs during the 60s and 70s was his own personal Vietnam, that's not going to fly. So what they're trying to say with Kamala Harris is that she's not smart, or whenever she has a good idea, they're saying she copied them. And I want to talk to you about this thing, and it's really important. When she was in Nevada and she was speaking to that giant crowd, she talked about how one of her goals would be to end the tax on tips that waiters and waitresses have to pay. Because as you know, service professionals are exempt from minimum wage laws. And so they're earning like $2+ an hour, so well below a living wage. And the idea is that a tip shouldn't be treated as income, but it should be treated as a gift. Now, Donald Trump and his campaign and supporters immediately jumped on that and said, well, that's exactly what Donald Trump wants to do, and she's just copying him. That is not true at all. And I will share with you Josh Marshall of Talking Points Memo, a tweet where he points this out. It's a long thread, but I'm going to read you just this part so you know. Most of the press has reported that as Harris copying Trump's idea, but that's not true. He was the first candidate to back the idea, but his and I'm summarizing it, his idea would be to exempt all so-called tips from he would exempt all tips from taxation, not just tips given to waiters and waitresses and so on, and busboys. And what does that mean? That means people like hedge fund managers could characterize some of their compensation as a tip and not pay taxes on it. So be careful when you believe anything that campaign tells you about Harris or his own plans. Okay, guys, it is time for Crazy Town. Crazy Town is Donald Trump. Donald Trump is now the number one example. He is the exhibit A of Trump derangement syndrome. Now, you know, TDS, or Trump derangement syndrome, is something that diehard MAGA supporters throw at anyone who's critical of Donald Trump. But he is, I think we should reclaim that, he is deranged. He is off his rocker. He is so upset about the crowds that he is seeing at the Harris campaign that his ego can't take it. And here is what he said. I think you've probably seen this repeated on Twitter or on television. This comes from Truth Social. And this is when he says, has anyone noticed that Kamala cheated at the airport? And then he goes on, and I will leave this up for a moment, but you can screen cap it if you'd like. Okay, he goes on to say that he believes that the crowds did not exist. Nobody, he says, showed up at the hangar in Detroit, and that it was a Photoshop photo and that some mechanic at the airport pointed it out. Okay, that's nonsense. And lots of people all over Twitter now and elsewhere are showing their videos and screenshots from the event. And so I'm going to share for you a selection that someone put together of the crowd videos so you can decide for yourself. Let's look. You get the idea. And to troll Donald Trump, the Harris campaign has an account on True Social. I don't know if you do, but I do because I like to see what's going on there, which is not much. And they only follow one account, and that is Donald Trump's. And they keep just, putting out and posting these crowd videos. So that brings us to the end of our show. And what I want to share with you before we go is this. Next week, I am going to the DNC, and I will be reporting here every morning still on Morning Jen. And also during the day and evening, I'm going to be sharing here and probably on TikTok some woman on the street, woman at the convention videos. I hope to get some fabulous interviews with people that you know and others who are delegates who you should know and future rising stars in the Democratic Party. And toward this end, I want you to see, yes, I have gotten my manicure and pedicure that matches this. I guess I can try to show you like this. I'm not very good at doing the mirrored thing. And it is, yes, red, white, and blue because I am ready to do this, feeling my patriotic duty. It's my first convention that I've ever been to. Super excited. And in the meantime, I will see you here tomorrow for Morning Jen every Monday through Friday at 8 a.m. Have a fabulous day, and I will see you soon. And of course, always on Nerd Avengers.